The space station called Horizon Point floated in the darkness between three star systems. It was a busy place. Ships came and went every hour. Traders sold things from 100 different worlds. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked through its metal corridors. Some had 4 arms. Some had no arms at all. Some floated. Some crawled. The station did not care what you looked like. It only cared about profit. In the lower levels of the station, far from the bright lights and clean floors of the trading halls, there was a place nobody wanted to visit. It was the disposal section. This was where broken machines went to be recycled. This was where old cargo containers were crushed into small cubes. This was where unwanted things were thrown away and forgotten. The disposal chutes were long metal tubes that went down into darkness. Anything dropped into them would fall for a long time before hitting the recycling machines at the bottom. The machines did not care what fell into them. They crushed everything the same way. On this night, something small and weak lay at the bottom of one of these chutes. It had not fallen all the way down. A piece of broken metal had caught it halfway, stopping its fall. This was lucky. Or maybe it was unlucky, because now the small creature had to suffer longer before it died. The creature was a dragon. But it was not like the dragons from old Earth stories. This was a real dragon, born on a world called Valora Prime. The Valori people had bred dragons for thousands of years. They used them as guards, as hunters, and as symbols of power. A strong dragon could breathe fire hot enough to melt steel. A strong dragon could fly faster than most ships could move in atmosphere. A strong dragon was worth more than a small moon. But this dragon was not strong. This dragon was small, very small. It was a dwarf, born wrong, born broken. Its wings were too thin. Its fire glands had never developed. Its scales were dull instead of shiny. When it hatched from its egg 3 months ago, the Valori breeders had looked at it with disgust. The dragon's name was Baram. The breeders had not given him this name. They did not name defective products. Baram had named himself, in his own simple way, after the sound the air made when it moved through the vents of his cage. It was the only gentle sound he had ever heard. For 3 months, Baram had lived in a small cage in the cargo hold of a Valori trading ship. The breeders kept him alive only because they hoped he might grow. Sometimes, dwarf dragons grew larger after a few months. Sometimes they became useful. But Baram did not grow. He stayed small. His wings stayed thin. His fire never came. The head breeder was a tall Valori named Tarek. He had 4 eyes and blue skin that shifted colors when he was angry. Today, his skin was very dark blue. He stood in front of Baram's cage and shook his head. "It is worthless," Tarek said to his assistant. 3 months of food wasted. 3 months of space in my cargo hold wasted. I should have killed it the day it hatched. His assistant, a younger Valori, looked at the small dragon in the cage. Baram was curled up in the corner, trying to make himself even smaller. His big eyes watched the 2 Valori with fear. He knew they were talking about him. He did not understand their words, but he understood their tone. "Should I take it to the medical disposal?" the assistant asked. Tarek waved one of his 4 hands. "Medical disposal costs credits. Just throw it in the recycling chute. Nobody will know. Nobody will care." The assistant opened the cage. Baram tried to run, but he was too weak. He had not been fed properly in days. The Valori grabbed him by the neck and carried him out of the cargo hold. Baram made small sounds of fear, but nobody listened. The few aliens they passed in the corridors looked away. A defective dragon was not their problem. The disposal section was cold and dark. The assistant found an open chute and held Baram over it. For a moment, he hesitated. The dragon was looking at him with those big, sad eyes. There was something in those eyes, something that almost looked like understanding, but the assistant was Valori. He had been taught since birth that weakness was shameful, that defective things had no value, that mercy was a waste of resources. He let go. Baram fell. The fall seemed to last forever. Wind rushed past his thin wings. He tried to fly, but his wings would not work properly. They never had. He spun and tumbled through the darkness. waiting for the end. Then he hit something. Not the crushing machines at the bottom, but a piece of broken metal sticking out from the wall of the chute. It caught him, stopped his fall, and held him there. The impact hurt. Something in his chest cracked. But he was alive. Bahram lay on the broken metal and tried to breathe. Each breath brought pain. He was cold. He was hungry. He was scared. Above him, the opening of the chute was just a small circle of light, very far away. Below him, he could hear the grinding sound of the recycling machines waiting for him. He made a small sound. It was not a roar. Dragons were supposed to roar. But Bahram had never learned how. It was just a small, sad cry. The kind of sound a baby makes when it wants its mother. But Bahram had no mother. He had never known comfort or warmth or love. Hours passed. Bahram grew weaker. His eyes started to close. The cold was becoming less painful now, which he somehow knew was a bad sign. He was giving up. His body was giving up. Soon, he would fall asleep and never wake up. Maybe that was okay. Maybe sleep would be better than this. But somewhere above him, in the brighter parts of the station, a human woman was working late. Her name was Yuna. She was 32 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. She was a veterinarian, one of the few humans who worked on Horizon Point. Most aliens thought her job was strange. Why would anyone spend their life taking care of animals? Animals were tools, products, resources. Yuna did not think that way. She had grown up on Earth, on a small farm in a country called Korea. She had learned to love animals before she learned to walk. Every creature had value to her. Every life mattered. Tonight, she was walking back to her quarters after a long shift. She had treated a merchant's sick transport beast, cleaned the wounds of a fighting animal that had been used for entertainment, and tried to save a small creature that someone had stepped on by accident. She was tired. She wanted to sleep, but as she walked past the disposal section, she heard something. It was faint. Very faint. A small, sad sound coming from somewhere below. Most people would have ignored it. Most people would have kept walking. The disposal section was dirty and dangerous, and the sounds that came from it were usually just machines doing their work. But Yuna stopped. She listened, and she heard it again. A cry. A small, weak, desperate cry for help. She knew she should keep walking. She knew she should mind her own business. She knew that whatever was making that sound was probably already beyond saving. But Yuna was human. And humans had a strange habit of doing things they should not do. They had a strange habit of caring about things that did not benefit them. They had a strange habit of hoping when there was no reason to hope. She looked around. Nobody was watching. She took a deep breath and started walking toward the sound. Bahram was almost gone. His eyes were closed. His breathing was slow and shallow. He did not hear the footsteps above him. He did not see the light from a flashlight moving down the chute. He did not feel anything anymore. But somewhere in the darkness, help was coming. Somewhere in the cold, heartless universe, a human had heard his cry. And that would change everything. Yuna stood at the edge of the disposal chute and pointed her flashlight down into the darkness. The beam of light only went so far before the shadows swallowed it. She could hear the recycling machines grinding far below. The sound made her stomach turn. She had heard the cry again. It was weaker this time. Whatever was down there did not have much time left. "Hello?" she called into the chute. Her voice echoed off the metal walls. "Is something down there?" For a moment, there was silence. Then she heard it. A tiny sound. Not a word, but something like a response. Something alive was answering her. Yuna looked around the disposal area. There was old equipment everywhere. Broken machines, discarded containers, tools that nobody wanted anymore. She found a long cable lying in a pile of junk. It looked strong enough to hold her weight. She also found a harness that workers used for maintenance. It was dirty and old, but it would work. She knew this was crazy. She knew she could get hurt or even killed. The chute walls were smooth metal. If she fell, there would be nothing to catch her. The recycling machines at the bottom would not care that she was human. They would crush her just like everything else. But she had heard that cry. That small, sad, desperate cry. And she could not walk away from it. Yuna tied the cable to a heavy machine near the chute opening. She put on the harness and connected it to the cable. Then she climbed over the edge and started going down into the darkness. The chute was narrow and cold. Yuna had to move carefully, using her feet against the walls to control her descent. The cable creaked above her. Her flashlight showed nothing but smooth metal walls going down and down. After what felt like a very long time, she saw something. A piece of broken metal was sticking out from the wall, and on top of it was a small shape. At first, Yuna thought it was a pile of rags. Then the shape moved slightly, and she saw scales. "Oh my God," she whispered. It was a dragon. A tiny dragon, smaller than a house cat. Its scales were a dull gray color. Not the bright colors she had seen in pictures of Valori dragons. Its wings were folded against its body, thin and fragile looking. Its eyes were closed. Yuna reached the broken metal and found a place to stand. She moved carefully, not wanting to disturb the piece of metal that was holding the dragon. She could see now that the creature was badly hurt. Its breathing was shallow. There was blood on its scales. One of its wings looked bent at a wrong angle. "Hey there," she said softly. "Hey, little one, can you hear me?" The dragon's eyes opened slowly. They were large and golden, much too big for its small face. For a moment, the dragon just looked at her. There was fear in those eyes, but also something else, something like confusion, like it could not understand why anyone would come for it. Yuna felt her heart break a little. She had seen that look before. She had seen it in abandoned dogs back on Earth, in cats that had been thrown away by their owners, in animals that had learned to expect nothing but pain from the world. "It's okay," she said. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to help you." She reached out slowly. The dragon flinched but did not try to run. It was too weak to run. Yuna touched its head gently, feeling the cool scales under her fingers. The dragon made a small sound, something between a whimper and a sigh. "I know," Yuna said. "I know you're scared. But I've got you now. I've got you." Getting the dragon back up the chute was not easy. Yuna had to hold it against her chest with one arm while climbing with the other. The dragon was light. Almost too light. She could feel its ribs through its scales. It had not been fed properly in a long time. The climb seemed to take forever. Her arms burned, her hands hurt from gripping the cable. But she did not stop. She could feel the dragon's heart beating against her chest. Weak, but steady. It was still alive. It was still fighting. When she finally pulled herself over the edge of the chute, she collapsed on the floor of the disposal area. She was breathing hard. Sweat covered her face. But she was smiling. The dragon lay in her arms, looking up at her with those big golden eyes. It did not understand what was happening. It did not understand why this strange creature had saved it. All it knew was that it was no longer falling. It was no longer cold. It was no longer alone. Yuna stood up carefully and looked at the dragon in her arms. It needed medical attention right away. Its wing was definitely broken. It probably had other injuries too. And it was severely malnourished. She started walking toward the medical section of the station. On the way, she passed several aliens. A tall Kethrani merchant looked at her, and then looked away quickly. A group of Telvari engineers stopped talking when they saw what she was carrying. Nobody said anything to her. But she could feel their eyes on her back. Yuna did not care. Let them stare. Let them think she was crazy. This creature needed help. And she was going to help it. The station's medical center was divided into two sections. One section was for people of all species. The other section was for animals. Yuna went to the animal section and found an empty examination room. She placed the dragon on the table and started checking its injuries. The wing was broken in 2 places. There were bruises all over its body from the fall. Its body temperature was too low, and when Yuna scanned it with her medical equipment, she found that it was severely dehydrated and had not eaten in at least 3 days. "Who did this to you?" she asked quietly. The dragon just looked at her. It could not understand her words, but it seemed to understand her tone. It seemed to know that she was not angry at it. She was angry for it. Yuna worked through the night. She set the broken bones in the dragon's wing and wrapped it carefully. She gave it fluids through a small tube. She found some nutrient paste that was made for reptile-like creatures and fed it small amounts. She kept the room warm and stayed by its side. As she worked, she noticed something strange. The dragon never tried to bite her or scratch her. Most injured wild animals would fight against treatment. They were scared and in pain, and they did not understand that the person touching them was trying to help. But this dragon was different. It seemed to understand. It seemed to trust her. Near morning, the dragon fell asleep. Its breathing was stronger now. Its body temperature was returning to normal. Yuna sat in a chair next to the examination table and watched it sleep. She knew she would have problems soon. The dragon was clearly Valori property. They bred dragons and sold them across the galaxy. If they found out she had taken one of their animals, they would not be happy. There could be legal trouble. There could be diplomatic trouble. Humans were still new to the galactic community. They did not have much power or influence. Making enemies with the Valori would be a bad idea. But looking at the small dragon sleeping on her table, Yuna could not bring herself to care about any of that. This creature had been thrown away like garbage. It had been left to die alone in the darkness. Whatever rules or customs or laws said she should return it to its owners, she was not going to do it. The dragon's eyes opened slightly. It looked at Yuna for a moment. Then, very slowly, it moved closer to her hand. It pressed its head against her palm and closed its eyes again. Yuna smiled. "I guess you're mine now," she said softly. "You need a name. Let me think." She remembered the sound the dragon had made when she first found it. That small, sad cry. It had sounded like a whisper of wind. "Baram," she said. "That means wind in my language. Do you like that name?" The dragon made a soft sound. Yuna decided that meant yes. Outside the medical center, the station was waking up. Ships were arriving and departing. Merchants were opening their shops. Aliens of all kinds were starting their daily business. None of them knew that in a small room in the animal medical section, a human and a dragon had found each other. None of them knew that this simple act of compassion would change everything. 3 days passed. Baram grew stronger every hour. He ate everything Yuna gave him. He drank water eagerly. The color started returning to his scales, changing from dull gray to a soft silver. His eyes became brighter. His movements became more confident. Yuna had taken to keeping him in her small quarters instead of the medical center. It was safer there. Fewer people asking questions. Fewer eyes watching. She had made a bed for him out of soft blankets in the corner of her room. Baram loved it. He would curl up in the blankets and watch Yuna with his big golden eyes, following her every movement. But Yuna knew the peace would not last. Someone would find out. Someone always found out. The someone turned out to be Station Administrator Kelos. He was a large alien with thick gray skin and small black eyes. He ran Horizon Point with strict efficiency. Rules were rules. Protocols were protocols. He did not like problems. And a human keeping a Valori dragon was definitely a problem. Kelos called Yuna to his office on the 4th day. She knew what it was about before she even walked through the door. The administrator's office was cold and clean, like everything else on the station. Kelos sat behind a large metal desk. Next to him stood a Valori she had not seen before. This one was taller than most, with darker blue skin and 6 eyes instead of 4. He wore expensive clothing and carried himself like someone important. "Dr. Yuna," Kelos said. His voice was flat and emotionless. "Please sit down." Yuna sat in the chair across from the desk. She kept her face calm, even though her heart was beating fast. "This is Trademaster Vorik," Kelos continued, pointing to the Valori. "He represents the Valori Dragon Breeding Corporation. He has brought a matter to my attention." Vorik looked at Yuna with all 6 of his eyes. There was no warmth in his gaze. No kindness. Just cold calculation. "You have stolen property belonging to my corporation," Vorik said. His voice was smooth, like oil. "A dwarf dragon. Serial number VDB7742. It was disposed of 4 days ago, according to standard procedures. Somehow, it ended up in your possession." "I found him in a disposal chute," Yuna said. "He was dying. I saved his life." Vorik corrected her. "Not him. It is property. Defective property that was legally disposed of. By removing it from the disposal system, you committed theft." Yuna felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Your people threw him away like garbage. They left him to be crushed by recycling machines. How is that legal disposal?" "That is how we dispose of defective products," Vorik said. His tone suggested that she was asking a very stupid question. "The dragon is genetically inferior. It cannot breathe fire. Its wings are malformed. It has no value. Destroying it was the correct business decision." "He's a living creature," Yuna said. "Not a product." Vorik made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You humans have strange ideas. Everything is a product. Everything has value, or it does not. That dragon has no value. It should have been destroyed." Administrator Kelos raised a hand. "Let us focus on the practical matter. Dr. Yuna, you must return the dragon to Trademaster Vorik. This is not a request. It is a requirement. The Valori have trade agreements with this station. We cannot afford to damage those agreements over one defective animal." Yuna looked at the administrator. "And what will happen to Baram if I return him?" "Baram?" Vorik said the name like it was a strange taste in his mouth. "You named it? How sentimental. What will happen to it is not your concern. It will be properly disposed of. That is all you need to know." Yuna stood up. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was strong. "No." Both Kelos and Vorik stared at her. "No?" Kelos repeated. "Dr. Yuna, I do not think you understand your position here. You are a human. Humans have been part of the galactic community for only 50 years. You have no political power. You have no economic power. You are guests in our galaxy. You do not get to say no." "I am saying no," Yuna replied. "I am not giving Baram to someone who will kill him. That is not going to happen." Vorik's skin shifted to a darker shade of blue. He was angry. "This is unacceptable. Administrator, I demand that you take action. Arrest this human. Take the dragon by force. Do whatever is necessary." Kelos looked uncomfortable. He did not like confrontation. He did not like problems. And this was becoming a very big problem. "Dr. Yuna," he said slowly, "if you do not comply, I will have to report this incident to the human embassy. They will not be happy. This could damage relations between humans and the Valori. It could affect trade agreements. It could affect human standing in the Galactic Council. Is one defective dragon really worth all of that?" Yuna thought about Baram. She thought about his big golden eyes looking at her with trust. She thought about the way he pressed his head against her hand when she sat next to him. She thought about how he was finally starting to play, chasing small toys around her room, his thin wings flapping with joy even though they could not lift him. "Yes," she said, "he is worth it." Kelos sighed. Vorik made an angry sound. Neither of them knew what to do with a human who refused to follow the rules. Over the next 2 weeks, the pressure increased. Yuna received official messages from the station administration. She received threats from Valori lawyers. She received concerned communications from the human embassy on a nearby planet. Everyone told her the same thing. Give up the dragon, avoid trouble, think about the bigger picture. Yuna ignored them all. She continued treating Baram. His wing healed slowly but surely. She designed special exercises to strengthen his muscles. She researched Valori dragon nutrition and created a perfect diet for him. She talked to him constantly, even though she knew he could not understand her words. She told him about Earth, She told him about her childhood on the farm. She told him about the animals she had loved and lost over the years. Bahram listened to everything. He could not understand the words, but he understood the feeling behind them. He understood that this human loved him. This was a new experience for him. He had never been loved before. One night, Yuna came home exhausted. She had spent 12 hours treating a merchant's sick animals. Her back hurt. Her eyes were heavy. She just wanted to sleep. But when she walked into her room, Bahram was waiting for her. He had somehow pulled one of her blankets off the bed and arranged it on the floor. He was sitting on it, looking at her expectantly. Yuna laughed despite her tiredness. "What are you doing, silly?" Bahram made a small sound and patted the blanket with one of his front paws. The meaning was clear. "Sit with me." Yuna sat down on the blanket. Bahram immediately climbed into her lap and curled up. He was warm now, his body temperature finally normal. His scales had become shinier over the past 2 weeks. They caught the light and reflected it in beautiful patterns. "You know," Yuna said softly, stroking his head. "Everyone says I should give you up. They say you're not worth the trouble. They say I'm being foolish." Bahram looked up at her. His golden eyes seemed to understand. "But I don't care what they say," Yuna continued. "You're worth everything to me. I don't know how to explain it. I just know that leaving you in that chute would have been wrong. Giving you back to people who will kill you would be wrong. Some things are just wrong, no matter what the rules say." Bahram made a soft sound and pressed closer to her. For a long time, they sat there together. A human and a dragon. In a small room on a space station far from Earth. Outside, the galaxy continued its business. Ships flew. Trades were made. Politics happened. None of it mattered to Yuna. All that mattered was the small creature in her arms, alive and safe because she had chosen to care. She did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if she would face punishment for her actions. She did not know if humans would suffer because of her decision. But she knew one thing for certain. She would never regret saving Bahram. Some choices were worth any price. 6 weeks had passed since Yuna found Bahram in the disposal chute. In that time, the small dragon had changed in ways that nobody had expected. His scales, once dull and gray, now shimmered with a beautiful silver color. When light hit them at certain angles, they sparkled like stars. His eyes, which had been clouded with pain and fear, now glowed with intelligence and curiosity. His body, though still small for a dragon, was strong and healthy. But the biggest change was not physical. It was the bond between Bahram and Yuna. The dragon followed her everywhere. When she went to work at the medical center, Bahram sat on her shoulder. When she walked through the station corridors, he walked beside her on his small legs. When she ate meals in the common dining area, he curled up under her table and waited patiently. At first, the other people on the station thought this was strange. Dragons were supposed to be fierce creatures. They were supposed to breathe fire and attack enemies. They were not supposed to act like loyal pets. They were not supposed to love their owners. But Bahram did love Yuna. Anyone could see it. The way he looked at her. The way he pressed against her when she was sad. The way he made small, happy sounds when she came home after work. This was not the behavior of a product. This was the behavior of a creature that had found its family. Some of the aliens on the station began to change their minds about the strange human and her dragon. A Kathrani merchant named Polim was one of the first. Polim sold fabric and clothing from her home world. She had a small shop on the trading level of the station. Every day, Yuna walked past her shop on the way to work. Every day, Polim had watched the human and the dragon with curiosity. One day, Polim stepped out of her shop as Yuna was passing. "Human," she said. "Dr. Yuna, may I speak with you?" Yuna stopped. Bahram, sitting on her shoulder, looked at the Kathrani with curious eyes. "Of course," Yuna said. "What can I do for you?" Polim hesitated. She was not used to talking to humans. Her people had always thought humans were strange and primitive. But something about this human and her dragon had made her curious. "I have watched you with your dragon," Polam said slowly. "I do not understand it. Dragons are products. They are tools. Why do you treat it like a child?" Yuna smiled. "Because that's how you should treat any creature that depends on you. With love. With respect. With kindness." Polam's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. This was a confusing idea, but it is not useful. "I have heard the Valori. They say it cannot breathe fire. It cannot fly properly. It has no value. Value is not just about what someone can do for you," Yuna said. "Every living creature has value just by existing. Bahram makes me happy. He keeps me company. He trusts me. That's more valuable than fire or flight." Bahram seemed to understand that they were talking about him. He lifted his head and made a small, proud sound. Polam looked at the dragon for a long moment. She had never seen a dragon act this way. Valori dragons were always cold and distant. They obeyed commands but showed no emotion. They were tools, just like she had said, but this dragon was different. This dragon was alive in a way she had not seen before. "Perhaps," Polam said thoughtfully, "humans understand something we do not." That conversation was the beginning of a change on Horizon Point. Word spread about the human vet and her dragon. People began to watch them more closely. They saw how Bahram and Yuna interacted. They saw the trust and love between them. And slowly, some of them began to question what they had always believed about animals and ownership. Not everyone changed their mind, of course. The Valori were still angry. Trademaster Vorek sent regular complaints to the station administration. He demanded that Bahram be returned. He threatened legal action. He said that humans were setting a dangerous example by refusing to respect property rights. But Administrator Kellos had stopped pressing Yuna. He had received messages from other species on the station, asking him to leave the human and her dragon alone. He had realized that forcing the issue would cause more problems than it solved. One evening, something happened that surprised everyone. Yuna was working late in the medical center. Bahram was in his usual spot, curled up in a small bed she had set up in the corner of her office. Outside, the station was quiet. Most people had gone to sleep. Then the alarms started. Red lights flashed. Sirens screamed. A mechanical voice announced, "Fire in Section 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. Fire in Section 7. Yuna ran out of her office. Section 7 was the residential area where many of the station's workers lived. If there was a fire there, people could be in danger. She was not the only one running toward the fire. Emergency crews were already moving through the corridors. But when she got to Section 7, she saw that the situation was bad. Very bad. A fuel line had exploded. Fire was spreading through the corridors. The emergency systems were trying to contain it, but they were not working fast enough. Smoke filled the air. People were screaming, and in the middle of it all, trapped behind a wall of flames, was a group of children. They were the children of station workers, caught in the wrong place, at the wrong time. The fire was too hot for anyone to reach them. The emergency crews were trying, but they could not get through. Yuna stood frozen for a moment. She could see the children through the flames. They were huddled together, crying, calling for help. She wanted to do something, but she was just a vet. She had no equipment for fighting fires. She had no way to save them. Then she felt something move past her. Something small and fast. Bahram ran toward the fire. "Bahram, no!" Yuna screamed. But the dragon did not stop. Everyone watched in shock as the small dragon ran directly at the wall of flames. He was going to burn. He was going to die. It was suicide. But Bahram did not burn. Instead, he opened his mouth, and something came out. Not fire. Something else. A wave of cold air. So intense that it turned the flames to ice. The fire in his path froze solid and shattered into 1,000 pieces. A path opened through the inferno. Bahram ran through the path and reached the children. He stood in front of them, facing the flames, and kept breathing out that incredible cold. The fire could not touch them. The small dragon was holding it back. The emergency crews did not waste time being surprised. They ran through the path Bahram had created and grabbed the children. One by one, they carried them to safety. Bahram held the fire back until every child was rescued. When the last child was safe, Bahram stopped his cold breath. The fire rushed back into the space he had cleared. He turned and ran back through the path before it closed completely. He reached Yuna and collapsed at her feet, exhausted. Yuna picked him up and held him close. She was crying. "You stupid, brave, wonderful dragon," she whispered. "What did you do? How did you do that?" Bahram just pressed against her, too tired to make any sound. Later, the station's doctors would examine Bahram and discover something amazing. He was not defective at all. He was different. Instead of fire glands, he had developed ice glands. Instead of breathing flames, he could breathe cold, so intense, it could freeze anything. The Valori had never seen anything like it. Their breeding programs had never produced a dragon like this. Bahram was not broken, he was unique, and he had used his uniqueness to save innocent lives. That night, everything changed. The story of the small dragon who saved the children spread across the station. People who had ignored Yuna and Bahram now came to thank them. People who had called Bahram worthless now called him a hero. Trademaster Vorek quietly withdrew his complaints. The Valori stopped demanding Bahram's return. They were too embarrassed to continue. The dragon they had thrown away as garbage had turned out to be something special. Yuna sat in her room that night with Bahram sleeping in her lap. She stroked his scales, still amazed by what had happened. "I always knew you were special," she said softly. "I just didn't know how special." Bahram made a small sound in his sleep. His tail curled around Yuna's wrist. Even in his dreams, he did not want to let go of the human who had saved him. Outside the window, the stars shone bright. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was watching. And for the first time, some of them were starting to understand why humans were different. The news of Bahram's rescue spread far beyond Horizon Point. Within days, it had reached every corner of the galaxy. News channels broadcast the story. Social networks shared videos of the small dragon breathing ice to save the children. Everyone was talking about the human vet and her miracle dragon, but it was not just the rescue that captured attention. It was the whole story. How Bahram had been thrown away as garbage. How Yuna had climbed into a disposal chute to save him. How she had refused to give him up, even when powerful people demanded it. How her compassion had revealed something that the Valori's entire breeding program had missed. The galaxy had seen humans before. They knew humans were clever. They knew humans were stubborn. They knew humans built impressive cities and flew fast ships, but they had always thought of humans as young and foolish, too emotional and too soft for the harsh realities of galactic life. Now they were not so sure. On the planet Valora Prime, the headquarters of the Valori Dragon Breeding Corporation held an emergency meeting. The board members sat around a large table, their blue skin shifting nervously. "This is a disaster," one of them said. "We threw away a dragon worth more than our entire inventory. And a human found it. Do you understand how embarrassing this is?" "It gets worse," another board member said. "The Galactic Council is investigating our disposal practices. They want to know how many other valuable creatures we have destroyed. There are calls for regulations, calls for oversight." Trademaster Vorek stood in the corner, his skin the darkest blue it had ever been. He was the one who had ordered Bahram's disposal. He was the one who had tried to take the dragon back. Now he was the face of his corporation's failure. "What do we do?" he asked quietly. The head of the board, an ancient Valori named Krell, spoke slowly. "We learn. That is what we do. The humans showed us something we did not want to see. Our methods are not perfect. Our judgments are not always correct. Maybe." He paused, as if the next words were painful to say. "Maybe we should not be so quick to throw things away." It was a small change, a tiny crack in the wall of Valori tradition. But it was a beginning. On Horizon Point, life changed for Yuna and Bahram. They were no longer the strange human and her broken dragon. They were heroes. People smiled at them in the corridors. Children asked to pet Bahram. Merchants gave Yuna discounts at their shops. Administrator Kelos called Yuna to his office again, but this time the meeting was very different. "I owe you an apology," Kelos said. His gray face looked almost embarrassed. "I tried to force you to give up your dragon. I told you that he was not worth the trouble. I was wrong." Yuna sat across from him. Bahram curled up in her lap. "Thank you for saying that. The Galactic Council has taken notice of what happened here," Kelos continued. "They are impressed with you. With humans in general. They say that your species has a quality that others lack, a kind of stubborn compassion. They think it might be valuable." Yuna laughed softly. "Stubborn compassion. I suppose that describes us pretty well." "The council wants to invite you to speak at their next assembly," Kelos said. "They want you to explain human philosophy regarding animals and life. They think other species might learn from you." Yuna was surprised. The Galactic Council was the most powerful organization in the galaxy. Being invited to speak, there was a great honor. Especially for a human. Their species had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years. They were still considered newcomers. "I would be honored," she said. 2 months later, Yuna stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the seats around her. They had come from all corners of the galaxy to hear what the human vet had to say. Bahram sat on her shoulder, his silver scales shining under the lights. He had grown a little larger over the past months, though he was still small for a dragon. His wings had healed completely, and though he could not fly far, he could glide short distances. He was healthy and happy and loved. "Thank you for inviting me to speak," Yuna began. Her voice was carried by speakers throughout the vast chamber. "I am not a philosopher or a politician. I am just a veterinarian. I take care of animals. I heal the sick and comfort the dying. It is not a glamorous job, but it is important to me." She paused and looked around at the thousands of faces watching her. "I have been asked to explain why I saved Bahram, why I refused to give him up, why I risked my career and my reputation for one small dragon that everyone said was worthless. The truth is, I do not have a complicated answer. I did it because it was right. Because when I heard his cry in that disposal chute, I could not walk away. Because leaving him to die would have been wrong." Bahram made a small sound, as if agreeing with her words. "In my culture, we have a saying. The true measure of a person is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. Bahram could not do anything for me when I found him. He was dying. He was broken. He had no value in any practical sense. But that did not matter. He was alive. He was suffering. And I could help." Yuna reached up and stroked Bahram's head gently. "I know that many species in this galaxy think differently. You see animals as products. You see weakness as worthlessness. You throw away anything that does not meet your standards. I am not here to tell you that you are wrong. I am only here to tell you what I believe." She looked directly into the recording devices that were broadcasting her words across the galaxy. "I believe that compassion is not weakness. I believe that caring for the helpless is not foolishness. I believe that the value of a life cannot be measured by what it can produce or what it can do. Every creature that feels pain deserves mercy. Every creature that fears death deserves protection. This is not a business calculation. It is a moral truth." The chamber was silent. Thousands of aliens watched her, their expressions unreadable. Bahram was thrown away because he was different. He could not breathe fire like other dragons. His wings were too thin. By every standard the Valori used, he was defective. But those standards were wrong. Bahram was not defective. He was unique. He had abilities that nobody had ever seen before. And those abilities saved lives. Yuna smiled slightly. How many others like him have been thrown away? How many potential heroes have been killed because they did not fit the expected pattern? How many miracles have been lost because someone decided they were not worth saving? I do not know the answer. Nobody does. But I think it is something worth considering. She took a deep breath before her final words. Humans are new to this galaxy. We do not have great fleets or powerful weapons. We do not control trade routes or command vast armies. But we have something that we brought with us from our small blue planet. We have compassion. We have the ability to look at something broken and see potential. We have the stubbornness to save what others throw away. Maybe that is not much. Or maybe it is everything. I do not know. All I know is that I saved Bahram. And I would do it again 1,000 times. She stepped back from the podium. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, one representative began to clap, then another, then another. The sound spread through the chamber like a wave. Soon, thousands of aliens were applauding the human vet and her dragon. Bahram lifted his head proudly, his golden eyes shining. He did not understand the words Yuna had spoken, but he understood the feeling in the room. He understood that something important had happened. On the way out of the council chamber, an old alien stopped Yuna. He was from a species she did not recognize, with pale skin and eyes like deep pools of water. "I have lived for 300 years, he said slowly. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have seen wars that destroyed entire planets. But I have never seen anything quite like you humans." "What do you mean?" Yuna asked. The old alien smiled. "You save broken things. You love the unlovable. You fight for causes that give you nothing in return. It is strange. It is illogical. And yet..." He looked at Bahram, who was watching him curiously. "And yet, I think the galaxy needs more of it." He walked away without another word, leaving Yuna standing in the corridor with Bahram on her shoulder. That night, back on Horizon Point, Yuna sat by the window of her room and looked out at the stars. Bahram was curled up in her lap, sleeping peacefully. His scales glowed softly in the light from distant suns. "We did something today," Yuna whispered. "I do not know if it will change anything. I do not know if anyone will really listen. But we tried. That has to count for something." Bahram made a small sound in his sleep, his tail wrapped around her wrist, holding on tight. Outside, the galaxy continued its endless dance of stars and planets and ships and people. But somewhere in that vast darkness, seeds had been planted, ideas had been shared, and slowly, very slowly, things were beginning to change. All because a human had stopped to help a dwarf dragon that everyone else had left to suffer. All because compassion, in the end, was stronger than indifference. All because love, even for broken things, could change everything.